The Snake and the King's Daughter, an Albanian story titled Gjarpri, the vajza mbretit. My grandma told me this story. It was one of my favorites because it spoke about a way of living. And that way of living in Albanian is called vajza. There is no translation for it. It's not the honor of the word. It's not just keeping your promise. It's beyond that. It includes those principles, but it is deeper, more profound. There once was a woman who was very poor. She didn't own much at all, and she had no children. One day, she saw a little snake slithering up near her cat. And she went up to the snake and said, "Listen, I have no children, so I would like you to be my adopted son." And the snake agreed and called her mother. As the snake grew older, he said, "Mother, when will it be my turn to get married?" And the woman laughed and said, "My son, who would want to marry you? You're only a snake." But the snake insisted. And not only did he insist, but he asked for the king's daughter. Mom was worried. She went to the king, having faith in her son. And when the king heard of this outrageous request, he ordered the guards to cripple the poor woman by breaking her leg. And the woman crawled back to her son, and the son said, "Don't worry, Mom," took a ring, blew on it, and healed her leg. He then said to his mom, "I would like you to go and ask one last time, please." The woman, frightened, went anyways, out of her duty to her son. And the king said to her, "I will give you my daughter as long as you have a big palace filled with gold and beautiful gemstones and a carpet of silk and many guards and horsemen." So the woman, happy that she came out alive from the palace, went and told her son of the king's requests. Overnight, her snake, the son, he worked on it, and he managed to build that palace and everything else that the king had asked for. So when the king saw it, he wept and wept, and he cried so much because of his daughter's fate. But he kept the promise. He had given his word. And so the marriage was arranged. And at night, the king's daughter learned something that nobody else knew. The magical snake actually turned into a beautiful human at night, who was handsome and smart and most importantly kind. But he said, "Listen, you must not tell anyone that I am a human at night. Otherwise, I will forever turn back into a snake. And you will need iron shoes to look for me. And even then you may not find me." So the girl made a promise. And one day, as she was invited to a family gathering, it was in the evening. So her snake, the husband, actually walked in his human form, and nobody knew that it was her husband. And he took her by the hand and they started dancing. And the king and the queen just prayed in sorrow for their daughter to be freed of her fate and to marry someone like that handsome man with whom she was dancing. In another version, my grandma would tell me, it was her two sisters bugging her and showing her false pity until she finally just could not hold the secret anymore. But in this case, she revealed it to the family during the celebration and said, "You know what? That is my husband. He just turns like that at night." And all of a sudden, the snake just disappears. So the poor woman, she got her iron shoes and started walking her path. Eventually, she went to the sun, and she was greeted by the sun's mother and his children. The sun is a male figure. So when the sun's mom saw her, she said, "You know you will be eaten by the sun. He does not like human flesh." And the girl responded, "Not if you make him promise." So the mother took pity on her and made the son promise. And the son always listened to that motherly spirit who represented the life force. And so he didn't eat the girl but could not help her find her husband. So he directed her to the moon, the female counterpart. But the moon could not help her either, and she directed her to the wind. And the girl was greeted by the wind's elderly mother again, that great motherly spirit, and the wind's children blowing. And so the girl begged to the elderly mother, saying, "Please, tell the wind not to eat me or blow me to pieces." The wind kept the promise to her mother, to his mother, and did not eat the girl, but took her to a place where she could find her soulmate, her husband. And this is where the story differs. In one version that my grandma would tell me, the husband is found underneath a rock. He is a tiny little snake, and said to his wife, "Why didn't you keep your promise?" And they were forever forced to be apart. And in another story, which has a supposedly happier ending, well, the wind takes her beneath the earth to a kuchedra, which is an Albanian monster with 7 snake heads. And you would need to chop off all of those heads in order to conquer a kuchedra. If you just chop off the tails, it will grow just like a snake. So the story goes that because of their union, because the husband saw how much she loved him and the path that she took for him, he took courage and actually managed to kill the kuchedra and turn into a human forever, so that they lived happily ever after. I'm not sure which story version you prefer, but we can learn a lot from bee symbols. The snake here represented wisdom and besa and fertility. The snake was also a healer, represented medicine. And it's not the case like that with all Albanian stories, because the snake also has those forms of dualism, and oftentimes it's also full of deceit and sneakiness, but not this time. You can learn about the great motherly spirit and how much power she has and how much she influences our actions and our words. And you could also learn about that union of love and how important it is to keep it sacred and keep the promise to one another. Until next time.